Hey everybody, this is Richard and welcome to another episode of Fatal Error. This show began as a research project for me to understand how entrepreneurs and founders think about the climate emergency and figure out ways in which all organizations, not just non-profits, can become climate positive. Today's guest is Thomas Alisi, an engineer and consultant with experience in optimizing large-scale supply chains. He's now turned his attention to optimizing energy usage by large corporations. As the founder of Energy Open Piazza, he's pulled together a consortium, won public funding, and is now building his products. Let's hear what he has to say. When we spoke a few months ago, you were kickstarting this project, Energy Piazza, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. So this is a few months later. So how's that project going? What's it all about? What are you doing what's your role?
Yeah. So I think that it's quite relevant and important to point out that Energy Open Piazza is not a company just as yet. It might become a company, but it's mostly a consortium that is funded by a grant that conversely is funded by BASE, the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Sector of the UK government, and Natural Resources Canada. So it was a challenge called the Power Forward Challenge, and it's a UK and Canada joint initiative. Went through a quite long selection, took basically most of 2019 to get to a shape where our consortium was selected for the final stage. And then at the end, 6 projects were selected, 3 in Canada and 3 in UK.
Okay.
And we were one of them. So
out of how many projects, roughly, was it like?
No, I don't know exactly, but we've been told that it was very competitive. And at some point in March 2019, we had a call with the organizers, and we were in a mega massive Zoom call with about 100 plus candidates. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well done then,
Thank you.
Just to get through that. But yeah, you were going to say, I think, more about the consortium and then what the project is.
So we shaped the consortium around an idea. The idea was initially built as a kind of a collaborative idea between myself and my friends at Unit 9. So I'm an independent consultant, and I have my own LTD that I use for independent consultancy. I'm a software engineer by trade. I've done a lot of industrial optimization, manufacturing optimization, and kind of enterprise software architectures. So I was coming from that background, and we were kind of throwing ideas at each other with Yates, who's the co-founder and technical director at Unit 9. And we were thinking of doing something good for the planet.
Yeah.
And we thought that doing something in energy was a good thing, or at least trying to do something. And we shaped the idea around a basic concept, which is enabling energy transformations. Specifically, installing commercial and industrial batteries for the built environment, potentially paired with solar generation.
So when you say transformation, it's where the energy is coming from to power industrial plants or buildings or things like that, right? So switching to a renewable source in some way.
Yes,
yeah,
it doesn't need to be necessarily a renewable source. So that the power grid is changing. We know that the power grid is changing. It's just that we don't know how fast it will change and what direction it will take in the near to medium future. That's because the path that is going to take that change is kind of dependent on loads of parameters and factors. But at the same time, we feel that that for example, electric vehicles will be a big thing in 5 to 10 years time.
Sure. Yes, they're already growing and is going to keep being incentivized.
Yeah. So the idea of having, we had I mean, it's based on quite a lot of research, but we had the feeling that storage and generation with solar arrays will need to be something that is a big part of this transformation of the grid. And it's not happening as fast as it could because of loads of different factors. So we shaped the idea of giving people a clear understanding of what the transformation would entail so that possibly it would facilitate that transformation. Okay. And that means if you had, like, very practically, if you knew how big the battery should be and how big the solar array should be and how much it would cost and what would be the return on investment, if you had a clear way of seeing that, then possibly you would be enabled to take that decision either directly or indirectly. So you can possibly have access to funding for doing that.
And also plan for it, right? So if you know how much, well, I guess at a minimum, like physical space you need, right?
Yeah.
Is that the kind of thing that, so what does the product do that you're coming up with, that you're producing? Can you describe, you know, if I'm an office building, if I represent an office building of some sort, what do you give me?
We give you a set of tools that you can use to enter the parameters of your building, like location, size of the building, the destination of space, how the building is used, what's a kind of building materials potentially. So this kind of description of the place. And we give you the chance to create some scenarios, and scenarios are how big the battery should be, or how much it would cost depending on the size of the battery, how big the potential for solar array could be, and if I can use a parking lot or a solar rooftop, or depending on what is available. So you create these kind of set of scenarios, and we can tell you, that would cost such and such. You will be able to have these economical benefits because of the installation. So you can measure the return on investment. It might tell you that is not a sound investment now, right? But it might tell you, well, wait a couple of years, and then the technology will be mature enough to kind of sustain that kind of investment. Okay. So we don't want to push the investment at all costs. We want to measure the numbers that make the investment a sound decision.
So you're providing the information and then letting the decision making be sort of, you're not selling the solution. You're just selling the information at the moment, the data.
No, we're not. It's not a marketplace. It's a kind of it's a bunch of algorithms that enable data driven decision making.
Okay. And so is this currently operational? Are you in prototype mode?
So the project started February this year, 2020. So we're 7 months now into development. We had a first few months of kind of discovery, like in-depth discovery of how we would make things work, a little more in details. Then we started with a prototyping stage where all the partners were contributing with their own kind of part and effort. We just delivered, beginning of August, a set of prototypes that are actually actionable, so that can be executed. And now we are at the stage where we are assembling these prototypes in a single platform. So the goal is to get towards the end of the year where all these prototypes would be merged and operative in a single platform that allow users to actually make that prediction that I was talking before.
Okay. And so you mentioned at the beginning that Open Energy Piazza is not, no, is it Energy Open Piazza? Sorry.
Energy Open Piazza, yeah,
sorry. It's not a company at the moment. It's just a project that is sort of come out of this consortium that you put together.
Yeah.
But is it intended to be a company? Is there a revenue model that you're kind of looking at?
So the final part of the project will be last quarter this year and first quarter 2021. That would be dedicated to building the business plan that would translate the project into a commercial company. Okay. And what happens is that we have, as part of the consortium, we have also business partners who are giving us the initial traction. And basically, it's a matter of understanding in the all possible wide ways of translating this activity into a commercial platform. We need to understand, we need to validate these options with our stakeholders and understand what brings the most value to the stakeholders, and basically tackle that to make it become a commercial platform, hence a company.
Right. So you haven't. Okay, that's something which you're tackling towards the end of this year. And just to say, given the way that this year has shaped out to sort of be so far, it's pretty impressive that you've done the work you've done, because I know so many people have been just held back by the fact that people are working from home or with kids or so okay, so that's the sort of the story of what the project or company is sort of doing now and so on. But I also was interested in sort of in your story, right? Because your background is not in sustainability or environment or anything of the sort, right? You currently do consulting on the side, but I think previously, where was it, Pirelli you mentioned? So your background is almost like maybe as far as mine in a professional sense from actually being involved in anything in environmentalism or climate or whatever. How did that transition happen? That's kind of one of the things I'm interested in. So how'd you go from being, I don't know what roles you have, but like being maybe just regular executive corporate kind of person working for a large multinational to doing a startup in the climate space? What was that journey?
So I must say that I've always been kind of independent. So I've always been a kind of a freelance or independent consultant, or having my own little team, so that I could run projects independently. I wasn't hired as a perm by Pirelli, although I've been there quite a long time as a consultant, because I was working with my friend who back then was the head of data science at Pirelli. So we are both. I am an engineer by trade, so software engineer. I had a PhD in machine learning. I've done that kind of things, but I've always been entrepreneurial in my approach. So I was rather looking at building my own small team to sell consultancy services rather than being employed by a company. So that's the kind of approach. And what happened is that having worked with Pirelli, I saw a lot of problems that are pretty normal in industrial manufacturing. There's manufacturing efficiency, optimizations of the value chain throughout the process. It's a complicated process that brings a piece of rubber from Brazil to a factory in Turkey, and then to a distribution chain in Europe, and then back to the roads on an SUV in London. So you look at things kind of in a holistic way, and because I'm a software engineer, I see the problem that is kind of data driven, and try to optimize that path. So I remember that after about 3.5 years there, our kind of mission with Pirelli was coming to an end, because there was the company was going through a few restructuring phases, and I felt that I built the structure of this data science team in Pirelli, and it was good enough to go ahead and leave. And I had a bit of money on the side that allowed me to kind of take time off and start thinking of researching things that what's next. And I remember it was summer 2018. So it was actually before,
years ago, really.
Yeah, it was actually before Greta Thunberg and all that kind of movement that started later in September. And I remember exactly what I was reading, and I was reading the Wait But Why blog. I don't know if you've ever come across. It's a good one. And Tim Urban is the guy who writes on Wait But Why, and he wrote a series of posts called the Elon Musk series. And an Elon Musk series, it not specifically on Elon Musk, it goes through a lot of topics, mostly broadly touching the energy sector. And I was kind of illuminated by this series of posts. I was like, oh my God, I really need to do something. I need to try.
What were the posts about? Were they sort of saying was this praising Elon's sort of Tesla thing or not? Or what was the sort of general gist of these posts?
I think that it's not, yes, of course, they're in support of Elon Musk, but it's not that part that is important. The part that is important is trying to reason by first principles. And trying to reason by first principles means that we need to look at what we're doing from every now and then from a very, very high perspective, where we need to question everything of what we do and how we do, and try to see if they can be optimized. The famous quote about Elon Musk and SpaceX was that he was asking how much it would cost to launch a rocket to the moon, and the Saturn V was up to, I can't remember how many billions. And he then said, okay, but what is the value of the materials that build that rocket? And the value of the materials were like, I don't know, a few million. So it's like, okay, what is the problem that brings that technology from a few $million in value to mega billions? And how is it possible to optimize that process? And if you find a reasonable way to do that, then it's kind of, we need to have that commitment of changing things. So that reasoning in first principles is like looking at a big problem from a very high perspective and try to understand if that's doable, if that's fixable.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that's kind of triggered me in the idea of okay, now I need to really do something and try to understand better the energy sector and see if we can do it, because I knew that for a fact we could optimize energy, manufacturing efficiency by 20 or 30% in some cases by just connecting data silos And it's like, okay, I can apply the same approach to energy and possibly do the same optimizations, and that I think could be a potentially good thing for a planet.
Okay, so you have experience of optimizing these kind of large scale processes, and you kind of know that there's lots of inefficiencies there. And then you read this thing, which kind of like, I suppose, there's a bit of a light bulb moment, right, about energy. Pun not intended there. But then what happens next, right? Because I'm sure a lot of people have these kind of moments, you know, like I'm reading something and I think, you know what, somebody should do this. But to go from that to actually putting a consortium together, finding funding, or whichever way that happened first, how does, I suppose this goes to the heart of what it means to be an entrepreneur in a sense, but how does a kind of an independent consultant bring a consortium together and win funding, right? What was that kind of process? Sounds hard and fun. I don't know how you would characterize it, but
it's a roller coaster, to be honest. It's like it's going up and down. And well, I think it needs a lot of discipline. It needs a bit of luck. You need to be in the right place at the right moment sometimes, and that's just sheer luck every now and then. But the luck that you kind of build is like putting passion and being present and kind of creating those connections. Is like if you start building connections, you'll probably throw away 95% of them, but then you'll have the 5% that are actually working. So I think that I've been fueled by enthusiasm for I don't know, a year plus, and I had my own kind of savings so that I could carry on doing these things without being too bothered by needing a salary or something like that. Within limits, but at least I had a timeline, and being disciplined in terms of focusing on the problem and iterating and trying to find value until the right opportunity materializes, and that's how it works pretty much.
So this consortium you put together, are they kind of, what are they? Are they big companies who want to use your product or the product idea, or are they kind of research organizations? Can you, I mean, I don't know how much you can share, obviously.
No, okay. The consortium is entirely public. I'm totally happy to talk about it. So what happens for this kind of public funding opportunities is that you need to find the right balance. I kind of knew more or less the structure of these grants because I had a past, as I was saying before, in university research. I had my PhD, and part of my activities were funding the PhD with and funding my PhD students with public funding opportunities. So so the public funding normally would need a mix of the right recipe of partners who are in the consortium. So you need to find a business partner, someone that would represent the stakeholder value, so someone that would show that the grant actually has traction, someone that would
in your case? What kind of company?
We have two companies. We have Skanska, the property developer, big property developer, and we have Avison Young, which is a big property management company. They're based in
UK, right? Yeah.
They're North American and UK.
Okay. Yes, I've seen their name.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You've seen they have again big clients here.
Okay, so I don't know too much about Addison Young, but I sort of know a tiny bit more about Skanska because I sort of remember them from some stuff in the news a few years ago.
Yeah.
They're a big company, right? I don't know how much people they employ, but you know, you're talking, I don't know, but like thousands, right? It's like that
Yeah.
level of construction kind
Yeah.
of company.
Yeah.
How did you select them? How did you get in there? I mean, you know, this is not like a small 20-person company where you look them up in the yellow pages or whatever
No.
and you shoot an email to the CEO, right? How does that work?
No. So, I mean, to be honest, with the consortium is built in a mix of either a personal relationship, not only myself, but with Unit 9, who's the company leading the consortium.
Okay.
So I'm good friends with, as I was saying, with B8, who's the technical director at Unit 9. And this consortium was literally built in a mix of either cold calling people, that happened quite a lot, or cold emailing people, or random connection to someone saying, that guy might be interested in that thing that you're doing. Why don't you go and talk to them?
Yeah.
And it took quite a few months to get to this stage. And actually, what happened, and this is a quite interesting story, is that last year in September, when we were quite close to having the project approved, we had a little bit of a problem with how the companies were accepted in the grant because of a due diligence issue that the government had with them. So the problem is that when companies get private funding looked as debt on their book accounts.
Yeah.
And that rings a bell on government funding. So we had to basically last minute reshuffle the consortium, and we were found with 3 companies going away, and it took us almost a year to get to that stage. So it's oh my God, how am I going to do it? And it was 2-3 months of frantic calling people and say, okay, we have theoretical funding for this project, but we need a replacement for this company.
Okay.
And again, it's one of those cases where sometimes you know the guy and it's okay, and you build that relationship throughout. Unit 9 has worked in kind of research projects for quite a while, so they're okay calling Skanska and having that kind of conversation with them. But at the same time, we have, for example, University of Sheffield or Energy Systems Catapult or UCL. There are 3 of them are all in the consortium. And I remember calling Energy Systems Catapult by being introduced by a common contact and say, oh, they might be interested in what you're doing because they're doing something similar. So I literally jumped on a call with them and described what the problem was. And it's oh, okay, that's interesting. So you need to be really tenacious and
which is frankly no different to any other kind of entrepreneurial activity, whether you're building something in energy or just selling hats on the street. Frankly, it's sort of the same kind of thing. Was it, speaking to the universities aside, because I sort of know a little bit, universities tend to be more maybe approachable when it comes to kind of research things and kind of energy, climate related things. But companies are a mixed bag, especially big corporations, when it comes to how much they care or, give a crap about this stuff. Did you find that, for instance, you mentioned Skanska and a few others, Addison Young and so on. Are these companies do they really want to tackle this issue? Or, obviously these 2 are, but generally speaking, was it hard to find companies who are either worried or concerned or genuinely want to kind of make a change to the climate situation? Did you find 2 out of 1,000? You know what I mean? Or what's the kind of your impression?
It's a good one. So most of the people would say, yes, we are interested. Yes, we want to. Yes, we have committed to something. And that something could be, I've heard everything. I've heard net zero 2022, which is round the corner. Yeah. I've heard carbon negative 2030, which is quite impressive. But then when you go down to the real numbers, it's really hard to understand what is this kind of target that we are all setting to each other. And understanding what needs to be done is part of our kind of mission in terms of the output of the platform is exactly trying to understand what needs to be done. So we are at the stage where we're saying, okay, we're validating our models. We're trying to understand what is feasible and what is not. So we are giving this kind of consultancy for free at the moment because we're funded by public grants. What happens when the platform becomes a commercial entity? Would they commit to spending some money to make that decision making process a reality? I don't know. It's a little bit of a bet. I think that there's a lot of awareness. I think that there's good intentions, but at the same time, it's hard to understand when things will happen for sure, because we know for a fact that there's some factors that need to be taken into account that are, for example, public regulations, potential for subsidies, or this kind of how the market will change in the near future. Yeah. And understanding whether that commitment will come sooner rather than later depends on all these factors. So it's a tough one, to be honest. It's a tough one, and trying to understand that is part of the process. And I hope that even if you find companies that are committed only on a call and not in paper, I do understand them. It's a really tough process, and money, it's not. I mean, although it's largely available, but at the same time, a pandemic like COVID-19 might change everything, so people are aware that money is something that needs to be careful assessed to be spent in the right way at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. Thomas, thank you very much. We're getting up to the sort of time we had set out, and I think we've covered a bunch of things. So thank you so much. I have one last question. So the point of this podcast isn't to sort of be doing adverts and things like that, but given the kind of project you're doing, if somebody was interested in getting in touch with you about either using your service or trying it when eventually you launch it, or as a prototype or something like that, what kind of company or organization is ideal for you, and how should they get in touch? If you want them to get in touch at all at this point.
Well, yeah, no, I'm absolutely. I'm always open to discussions, and to be honest, there's all sorts of discussions that might be useful. There's a lot that needs to be done. We're kind of in a startup mode. So we need to build everything, like commercial relationship, the technical infrastructure, everything. So literally, what I found quite rare is the energy sector is somehow an old sector that comes from kind of the Industrial Revolution, and it hasn't evolved much in terms of infrastructure. So whoever has good knowledge of how energy works, but at the same time how data works, I think these are two precious things that when they come together, they're very valuable to us.
Okay. And how do you have a website at the moment or something where people can sort of find more about you or contact info or things like that?
It's energyopenpiazza.io.
There we go. Perfect. We'll include that in the write-up as well, so people can just click through, hopefully. But that's great. Thomas, thank you very much. I'm going to let you get back to your day.
Thank you so much.
And the little bit of time you have while the kids are at school.
Hope the same.
Yeah.
Hope the same for you. Hope this is helpful.
Yes, cool. And best of luck with everything. Thank you for listening. Please visit fatalerer.blog to join our mailing list and help support our community and project. And if you like the music, please check out the Happy Quartet on Bandcamp. That's it for today.